So we've designed our homepage. In a minute, we also want to do our next page. So for example, a specific project in our gallery. And for that, we need some components that we can reuse over different parts of the page. So this header, for example, stays the same for all of our pages. And then equally, every item in our gallery also sort of has the same formatting, right? It has this image in this big image in the beginning, and then on one side it has a title, and on the other side it has the year that we produced this image. So these things we can group together, and we did group them together, but they're now separate, which means that if I now change the color, for example, of this element, this one doesn't change. They're not linked in any way. Now, it would be nice that if we change something, for example, if we make this text bold, that this text would be bold as well, but not the content of the text, but just the styling of that thing. And we can do that in Figma really easily using components. And so the main thing that we have to do is we have to start with working with one. We have to turn that into a component. So we right click the element that we have, and we can do create component. And you see that it converts here that to this filled in diamond, and that's the meaning that it's a component. That's the master component basically, or the parent component. Now, if I make copies of that component, and I'm going to delete the second gallery item just to show you, if I make a copy of that component, now what happens is that I get these second component, but this has a different shape, right? It has this hollow diamond. Basically, it's the child component of that other component. And that means that if we make changes here to the master, that's going to influence our child component. So if we influence our parent, for example, if we make this text bold, where is my bold here? Bold, then you see that this one applies bold here, but we can also do overrides. So here, for example, we can also change the name of this text. So these are our balloons. Now, these are not really balloons, so we can change this image here. So all of these things we can still change, but it still stays linked to that component. So we can run our unsplash, choose a different image. That's probably not going to be balloons, right? Yeah. So houses. Like this. You can also change the year if you want to. Yeah, this is from 2017 maybe. But any other change that we make, for example, in the height of the image, that also gets reflected in the other side. See? So there are a couple of things that we can't do for our child components. We can't actually move these elements. We can change the content, but we can't move them. You see, if I try moving an element of that component, that it moves the whole thing. So if I want to make visual changes, I have to make them here, right? So these changes are automatically converted down to the other component. And you can also see it here in the side. So we have this word called the master component, and you can see here this item is an instance of this item. So we can go to that master component and then we'll select it. And we can also change our what's called our overrides. So here, if we click this little arrow, it's going to say, well, what are the things that you changed? For example, here I changed the text to houses. So I can click here and I can say reset text. So that's going to reset to what I had before. So that's the way that these components work. We have our base master component, and then we override certain parts of it so that they apply to other elements. And components are really useful because we can now make more of these things. So let's change our home page, add another component here. And it doesn't matter if we make a copy of this one or this one, that's all the same. So we can copy this one here. We can use the same height. Quickly change the image from Unsplash. Wait, I have to select the image. And it's super easy to make new things here. Right. And then, and that's really important, still be able to change things like the text, for example. If I want to make this bigger, you see that it applies to all of these things immediately. Or if I change the color, it applies to all of these things immediately. So that makes it really easy to use components. Now I'm going to use components for the header as well, just to show you how that works, because in a minute we'll make our next page, and then that's really useful. So our header, we can also right click and do create component, and that turns it into a component. So next page that we are making, we can just drag that over, and that's going to have that same component that we use from our home page. I'm going to clean this up a little bit and change the footer, drag our frame here. Oops, I see that I missed the text. So I have to make sure that everything drags along like this. Drag the home page, and then I'm done with my home page here, with my components.